So as Paul is saying here in 2 Corinthians 6, what agreement does Christ have with Beliar and the temple of God with idols? There's that idols and you know, things of idols. For you are a temple of the living God, as God said, I will dwell among them and walk among them. I will be their God. He's quoting scripture here. And they shall be to me a people, probably Deuteronomy or something. Wherefore come out from the midst of them and be separated, saith the Lord. I don't know where he says that, except in the Qumran documents, where they talk about separate from the men of ungodliness. It's in the community rule. And the unclean touch not. That's not the usual Paul, you see. He's not worried about clean and unclean, as Acts says, you know, don't make distinction between clean and unclean. And the unclean touch not. This is Qumran stuff. And you shall be for me sons and daughters. You see, you were all sons and daughters. Therefore, having promises, beloved, we should cleanse ourselves from every defilement of flesh and spirit. And there it is. End of, beginning of 7:1-2. Perfecting holiness in the fear of God. Now, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. When you read the Damascus document and then the community rule, you'll see that they call themselves at some point the men of perfect holiness. And we're going to get the fear of God also in some at the end of the Damascus document. So those are very Qumran-like phrases, very different from the usual Paul. You'll find that at the end of chapter 6 in Corinthians 2, beginning of chapter 7. But perfecting holiness in the fear of God, that's going to be right out of the scrolls here. So those are the kinds of things to me show that he's familiar with their doctrine, and I think he spent time there. Sometimes he lapses back into their doctrine. Anyway, the walkers in perfection here, and they pursued them with the sword, the smooth things people, and attempted to divide the people. So there's an attack on the righteous one and his walkers, and some of his followers called the walkers in perfection. Now, look, this doesn't mean that this is proven or not proven, but there are not many parallels we can get for these things. And of course, what's the establishment theory? Professor Eisenman, you're not giving us the establishment theory. Well, there is none. They never go through these documents like this. They talk about paleography, they talk about archaeology, but they don't talk about these concepts. They don't go line for line through you won't find any book that goes line for line through this document. In any case, they don't have any identification for the liar, very few identifications for the righteous teacher. Maybe Honi the circle drawer is about the only one I've ever heard. Onias the righteous, mentioned in Josephus. Honi the circle drawer in the 2nd century BC, or 1st century BC actually, who when Aristobulus, his followers are holed up in the temple in 63 BC, they bring out Honi to condemn his followers. Josephus has it in the Antiquities, and he refuses and they stone him. I have a lot about Honi the circle drawer in my James book. I don't have time to tell you about it here. That's the only candidate I've ever heard for the righteous teacher in the establishment. Mostly it's unknown people. Only that the wicked priest or priests, wicked priest is singular, but they talk about plural Maccabeans, are in their theory identified as one or another of the Maccabean high priests. Jonathan, Simon, Alexander Onias, Aristobulus, one or another of these people in their theories, but they've given up trying to identify anyone. But you see, an attack by the liar and others, called the seekers after smooth things, on the righteous one and the walkers in perfection. There is such an attack in the apocryphal Christian literature, the Pseudo-Clementine literature. The recognitions has Paul attacking James in the temple and throwing him down the temple steps and flailing about, and some being killed and James being left for dead and being carried down to the Jericho area. The Jericho area, why are they carrying James down to the Jericho area in the Pseudo-Clementines? How would they know that? And then a month later, when he sends out Peter for his first missionary journey to Caesarea to confront Simon Magus, Peter goes to Caesarea at the end of book 1 and the beginning of book 2 of the Pseudo-Clementine recognitions. And there, you know, Peter is a daily bather, and he's kind of quite a gentle fellow, and he rises at dawn and prays and so on, just like in the Essenes and the Scrolls. And he wears threadbare clothes. Anyway, he goes to Caesarea and he confronts Simon Magus there. Simon Magus, we find in Josephus, is in collaboration with the Herodians. A person called Simon the magician in the Antiquities, not in the war, so you don't have it anyway, encourages the Herodian princess to divorce her husband who had circumcised himself and marry the Roman governor Felix, who is responsible for the crucifixion of innumerable revolutionaries and who appears in Acts along with the woman that had divorced her husband to marry him, Drusilla, the Herodian princess. And Paul preaches to them. And Felix says to Paul around Acts 24 or so, Paul, stop a little more and I would be a Christian. Or Agrippa 1 or Agrippa 2, Drusilla's brother, says that to him. These are all Herodians. And they rescue Paul and they make sure that he gets to Rome. So Paul is very, very close to these people in terms of the continual conversation that they have. But in the Pseudo-Clementines, he's execrated as the enemy. And he attacks James and leaves him for dead. Others are killed, and they carry James down to Jericho. And when Peter gets to Caesarea, he greets Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus in the Gospels is a little man who climbs up a tree in Jericho, if you recall, because he can't see Jesus come, and then he invites Jesus into his house, and he's supposed to be a tax collector. If you know that chapter where Jesus is on his way up to Jerusalem, stays in little Zacchaeus who's climbs up a sycamore tree. Well, I've been to Jericho, and I can assure you there are no sycamore trees in Jericho. Maybe some in Rome and Greece, but there's only palm trees and things like that. It's like Palm Springs. There's no sycamores there. But anyway, he climbs up a sycamore tree. But the Zacchaeus, I think, is in the Pseudo-Clementine recognitions. He's one of the Christian community in Caesarea. I don't think he's a tax collector. Anyway, maybe two different Zacchaeuses. It doesn't matter. The point is it's all there for about Jericho. And the liar or the enemy pursues James and his community down to